You have to celebrate the small wins. And when I say small wins, I mean like small wins. It's grueling. I'm Angie Hicks, co-founder of Angi. I'm here with Monica Langley of Office Hours Business Edition to talk all things Angi.
Hi, I'm Monica Langley with Office Hours Business Edition. Today I am featuring Angie Hicks, the founder of Angi, formerly Angie's List. So that's how you all may know her. Angie, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for having me here at your office in Indianapolis.
Happy to host you.
I have visited Indy downtown when I was a Salesforce executive because they have their tower down there. I know you're familiar with it.
Exactly.
And I have become more familiar with Angi, not you, the service, because I have been going on there looking for contractors.
Fantastic.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about your founding story. What were you doing before you founded Angi?
I started Angie's List right out of college. So it was my first real job. So I had met who would become the man who became my co-founder when I was in college. I was doing an internship as a part of a program I was in at DePaul University. And he worked at a venture capital firm, and it was kind of a fun little story. I was very shy and quiet, and he was interviewing me, and he realized as he was talking to me, he's like, she seems smart. But the highlight of her resume is Employee of the Month at Ryan's Steakhouse. I think this girl could use a break. So luckily I got that internship. And, it's one of those things where you never know where things will lead you. And then in my senior year, Bill reached out again and said, hey, I'd love to start a business. Are you up for that? And every part
you
of me
must have impressed him.
Every part of me said no, right? It was like,
who persuaded you to take the leap?
So I talked to so many people about this. I talked to my parents, I talked to my friends, I talked to my professors. I was like, I don't know. This is just not me. I am not an entrepreneur. And in 1995, you didn't even hear about entrepreneurs as much then, right? It wasn't like this hot thing to go do. And so finally, I talked to my grandfather. My grandfather grew up in the Depression and was super financially conservative. And he just kind of looks at me and he's like, Angie, you should just do it. Like, what's the difference between being 22 and looking for a job and being 23?
Yeah.
And Bill was like, look, Angie, I'll raise enough money for, to fund it for the first year. And if it doesn't work, you'll have a great, essay for business school.
Perfect. And that was wise advice from your grandfather.
It was. It's sometimes those little comments that you don't realize that can kind of give you the nudge to kind of get you out of your own headspace. So I thought I was going to be a business consultant. I was an economics major. I was ready to do business consulting. And I tell young people today, it's like, hey, you need to think about opportunities that come to you, because when you're young, you don't see it.
True.
So be willing to say yes more than you're willing to say no, because who knows where it'll lead.
You not only are the founder of Angi, you are the face of Angi. What prompted you to do that?
So when we first started the business, it wasn't even called Angie's List. So little secret, it was called Columbus Neighbors. We started in Columbus, Ohio. And what we realized, it was a call-in service and a newsletter, but people didn't realize there was a call-in service. They just thought what we published in our newsletter each month was the list. So they're like, well, maybe there'll be plumbers next month. I don't know. And so we wanted to reposition it. So we started talking about it, and we had one guy that was on our board that was like, he was an ad guy, and he's like, hey, it should be the list. We've got, put our arm around the homeowner. We're got kind of the protector. And then another idea was to name it Jackie's List. Jackie was one of a woman we knew in Columbus who knew everybody. Like if you needed to know something in Columbus, you'd go ask Jackie.
Okay.
And at the last minute, Bill says, why don't we just call it Angie's List? Because she answers the phone. And even if she leaves, we still have a good story, and it's simple and it's true. So it was a decision made when we had 1,000 people, 1,000 members. We were teeny tiny. And so I consider that one of those decisions we make that we don't really think about, because it didn't matter at that point. Who knew what it was going to become?
How many people do you have contractors now if you only had 1,000 back then?
So that was homeowners who only had 1,000. So we've helped, homeowners, we've helped hundreds of millions of homeowners over the years. I think we might have, we had a handful. We were building the list at that time.
Wow.
It was like you'd call me and say, Angie, I need a bathroom remodeler. If I didn't have a remodeler, I'd go call a bunch of homeowners and ask them, like, have you remodeled your bathroom? Who did you use? Did you like them? Okay. And then I'd call you back once I got some recommendations. Our belief was like you needed to be local to understand local.
Yeah, that's valid.
Yeah. And so for the first, 5 years, we were opening like a market a year. We would open a physical office in that market. We would have somebody who was running that office because we believed that you should know that, XYZ Plumbing sat behind the dry cleaners at the corner of 3rd and, whatever, that you needed that level of detail. And in fact, that was probably one of the biggest challenges we faced was when we decided we couldn't scale the business that way, right? It's like it's very hard to scale that way when you're rolling out city by city. So that was probably one of our biggest kind of first challenges.
At the beginning, in those first few years, did you have more happy thoughts or freaking out thoughts? I mean, were the good days good and the hard days hard?
Yeah, it's in the earliest days, the hard days are really hard. And it's lonely. It's lonely starting a business. And I moved from Indiana to Ohio. I didn't know anybody. I worked alone. It was really hard. And I was fresh out of college. So I was also adjusting from that world of like, all of my friends are everywhere and we're going out and doing things. And then it was just like crickets. So it was hard. And so one thing that I learned is you have to celebrate the small wins. And when I say small wins, I mean like small wins. So I was like, I need to sell one membership. We sold the homeowner memberships. The members paid at the beginning. And I was like, I have to sell one a day. And I was like, if I sold 2 a day, I was like, fireworks. And it was a huge excitement. But yeah, it's grueling. It's grueling when you're kind of starting out and kind of figuring out and kind of remembering to balance kind of where you are with where you want to be.
Now, entrepreneurship, as you say, now is a big word. At the Haslam College of Business, we have a major in management entrepreneurship, for example. But entrepreneurship requires bringing people along with your vision.
Correct.
So, did you grasp that at the beginning, that you have to be a visionary at the same time?
This was actually, quite honestly, it was years later that I even gave myself credit for being an entrepreneur because I did not think I possessed the skills that an entrepreneur needs to be successful because I was exactly, you need to be a visionary, you need to be charismatic, you need to be a risk taker. And I was like, I would love to just sit here and work on a spreadsheet,
But Angie, the thing is, when you started, it was in 95?
Yes.
When you started, it was truly an offline world. You couldn't hide behind the computer.
Yes. Our first email address was an AOL email address.
Yeah. So, and I've heard you mention before that you're an introvert.
Right.
But you had to be out front all the time. How did that?
Yeah.
You had to go sell things door to door or answer the phone.
I did. And I think that's where, when I said it was hard because it was personally very hard for me. It's like I had to figure out a way to go do things that were well outside my comfort zone.
Really?
And, so that's when, I kind of realized like the element that I think is kind of the trait of an entrepreneur that's not often talked about as much is perseverance.
Oh, that's interesting.
And, when you think about it, most businesses do fail in their first year. It's that perseverance. It's like, I'm not going to quit mentality that can make a difference. And that one, I had lots of.
Perfect. Even though you weren't like the extrovert out there doing that, you persevered.
Yes.
Now, let's talk about your leadership. Did you find that you made mistakes early on as a manager and a leader?
Yes. Yeah, very much so. I was 22. Let's think about what management background I had. I had zero, and it's hard. I wasn't good at hiring people, and kind of not great. I was a horrible delegator, so it was challenging,
Because you just want to jump in and do everything yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, but you actually, to grow, need people.
Exactly. And so no, I was not good. And it's something that, I'm probably most proud of in the journey is just kind of how I had to figure out my own authentic leadership style. And to this day, I mean, I still view myself as kind of a leader coach. I'm like, I am a player coach, right? I am right there beside you. I'm like, let's work on this together, and figure it out. I did everything I could to not sit in an office. I don't like offices. I like sitting in cubes. I want to be around.
That's why we're outside your office.
Exactly.
Here, Andy.
I want to be around my people so we can just, lean over and chat. So I very much get energy and kind of that creativity from that.
How do people perceive you as a leader?
I'll answer it with a story. How's that? So I was coming into Indianapolis one night late on a flight, and I was walking through the airport, and this young man came up and started talking to me, and he's like, I just wanted to let you know that, I started my career at Angie's List, and, I've gone on to do other things, but that start made all the difference in the world. And, hearing something like that kind of speaks volumes to me of like kind of the impact that we make on people. And exactly. I do believe when it comes to what makes good leaders are leaders that are vested in their people and care about their people. You can do a lot of tasks at a lot of different companies, but what's going to make something special is whether you have a leader that cares about you.
You mentioned balance a little bit. That's very important as working parents. I mean, I was a working mom, you've been a working mom, but coming and running a public company gives you a whole nother set of challenges.
Right.
Okay, so how do you handle that?
Yeah.
And do you find it more challenging?
Yeah. You always have to make sure that you've got your priorities right. And, there is not one recipe for anyone trying to do this because, while I love the word balance, I really prefer the word choice.
Ah.
Because it's work-life choice.